Ooh, man, Dougie, we survived an interesting Broncos Sunday, to say the least. Welcome into the Colorado Prep Show, presented by UPSWING. I'm the editor-in-chief of Colorado Preps, Dan Mormon. Along with me, as always, the editor-in-chief of Mile High Sports Magazine, Doug Ottewell. Doug, you were live in person for some craziness yesterday.
I was, and because I was brought up the proper way, I did not leave. You're not supposed to leave a game until it's over, regardless of the score. Even if it's a Rockies game, which sometimes I question that part of my upbringing, but great game. You don't get to see those very often, so I was happy that I was there for it.
And you got a great piece up about quarterback Bo Nix being a true quarterback, as in he might only play one quarter of the game, but maybe that's all you need him to do. I highly encourage everyone to check that out.
People envisioned when they named the position, but he's living up to it.
Yeah, that's what he's got going. So I encourage everyone to go to milehighsports.com and check that out. But that's on the professional side. We deal with the prep side here. And before we get into everything that we like to do, guys, the relevancy, or not the relevancy, maybe the timeliness of the Broncos issue or the football issue of Mile High Sports Magazine is nearing the end of its 2025 life cycle. Is that a fair way to say it, Dougie? I mean, we've got our Broncos predictions, takes, everything, which may or may not be holding up at this point. I've been too afraid to look, but we also have our preps kids who are on the upswing, and a lot of those kids have been proven to have some fantastic seasons so far. Highly encourage everyone, check it out at milehighsports.com/magazine to check out the digital copy or find where you can get your hard copy. But as we get into more preps talk, Doug, we've got to look at what's on the upswing for us, and I'm going to go ahead and go first. We have to give a shout-out to the Lakewood football team for 43 straight games. The Tigers had come up on the losing end, and it was just an emotional showdown on Friday, them beating Overland 20-7. You can read the full story on coloradopreps.com, courtesy of our friend Dennis Ployce. Coach Joshua Carvalho got emotional when he was on the scoreboard show with Kevin Schaefer, talking about his kids, talking about getting that weight lifted off their shoulders. It was just such a fantastic day for Lakewood. You'd never want to see a team on a streak like that. So for that to end, good for Lakewood, good for the Tigers. I hope that springs them forward a little bit. Dougie, what's on your upswing?
Well, first of all, I think you make a great point. And I know on this show, we talk a lot about the top 10 teams and the teams that are vying for state, but the Lakewood story is a good one. It's a good reminder that there's a lot of layers to a high school football season. And even if you're not a state champion or even a state playoff qualifier, like there's great value in high school sports, whether it's football or something else. So Lakewood kind of exemplified that notion this week. But in the spirit of getting inside of Jermaine's head right off the bat, I am going to go with Legend for my team on the upswing. I know this is a team that Jermaine has followed closely. He's got kids that he's worked with on that team very closely. But Legend is one of those teams that, they had an early season loss, maybe dropped them a little bit in our rankings, but they've kind of been on a tear lately. And last week on the show, we talked to Fountain Fort Carson head coach. And look, that team was on the rise. They were playing well. They played Legend this week, and they got thumped 56-13. Titans delivered a whooping. I just kind of look at Legend as that team that they got probably the best quarterback in the state. They're starting to peak at the right time. They've got that experience of making it all the way to the state final last year. I don't think they're a team that anybody wants to play in the playoffs. So my team on the upswing, in the spirit of Jermaine, is Legend.
Well, and you mentioned they're peaking at the right time. Why do you think they peak at the right time, Dougie? Could it be because when those players who work with Jermaine go to upswing, that they are getting the chance to train like champions while building discipline, confidence, and resilience, the kind of training that you typically see at upswing? I mean, if that's the case, upswing is, as you know, we talk about it week after week, is one of those programs that doesn't necessarily care about the dollars. They care about the development of kids. So when you earn an upswing scholarship as a young athlete, it can propel you towards your next big win, which is exactly what happened for those Legend Titans on Friday or on Thursday against Fountain Fort Carson. And of course, when you get your training, after you get your physical preparation, your mental preparation, on your way out the door, hit the sauna, hit the hot tub, hit the Normatec compression leggings, the whole deal. The recovery center is a big part of those young athletes pushing their limits. And UPSWING offers a safe, guided space to restore that strength and that energy for those kids. And with that, we go out to our guy at UPSWING, live from the UPSWING facility just off of Arapahoe. Our guy, Jermaine Stafford. Jermaine, you're there with the turf, the track in the background. You look like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, our new time for this show, you're ready to get out and get some work in.
Yes, indeed. In about an hour or so, we'll be rocking and rolling in here. So thank you, Doug, for actually allowing to get into my head and talk a little bit about Legend, because I have to tell you guys, I took it, I took it on the nose a little bit with my Legend community when we were speaking very highly of Fountain Fort Carson. Sorry, Coach, up there in the Springs. But, the Legend team were very fired up that we were highlighting a coach that was next on their radar and how great they were playing, considering, let's be realistic about it. Legend is one snap away from being perfect, right? I mean, they're literally one snap on the extra point away from possibly being perfect. They've scored 50-plus points in the last 4 games. I mean, when you look at how much they actually scored, they are 186 on the year, right? Only giving up about 120. You know who that's next to? That's Creek. That's 35 more points than Creek, and a couple of touchdowns less given up. So yeah, they're playing at a high level. I think there's no such thing as peaking at the right time for a team like this that's been doing everything right other than one snap. They're consistent, and this week for me has been mending some of those young men. You talk about the recovery center. One of their star corners, Jaden Scaife, is out for the year at corner there with a fractured ankle, and he, mending him physically and mentally has been pretty much my job this week, getting that team ready.
And I can't wait. We're going to talk a lot of 5A football here in a bit, guys. But when we're trying to bring on coaches and try and get some insight to what we're doing here each week, it's not always an easy task. And when I was watching the chaos unfold of the Denver Broncos, I thought, what's been the most chaotic thing that we've seen all year in high school football? It's Class 3A football. So I had to go out and get myself one of the coaches who's just been involved in perhaps one of the more interesting seasons overall from a classification out there, and that's Pomona head coach Nathan Johnson. We're going to welcome him in. Of the six of the 7 football classifications, Coach, they've got 2 weeks to prepare for playoffs. You guys are given that third one as a result of a 16-team bracket. But thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking the time to come in and promote your kids and talk about your team.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, if the playoffs started today, Coach, Pomona would be the number 3 seed, and it's been a wild year. Your only loss is to Dakota Ridge, who you either ask the humans, they might say they're the 1 or 2 team in 4A, and I think the computers have them at same thing, 1 or 2. I can't remember which is the order, but what did you guys learn from that loss that you think can propel you to getting back to making a deep playoff run like you did last year when you got to the semis?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, we have 2 really hard, in my opinion, the hardest 3A schedule in terms of playing, those 2 4A teams, and beating Pueblo West and losing to them the year before was a huge confidence booster. But then when we got to Dakota, we had a couple injuries that we had to adjust some things with, but they came out and smacked us in the mouth, and, we played pretty poorly. So it was a very humbling experience. Then again, going into the bye, and then playing Wheat Ridge, kind of click and reset. And then, we're now 2 games into, we're back on track, feeling a lot better and more confident down this stretch.
You have a lot of returning players from last year. You guys got to the semifinals, and if I'm venturing a guess, I feel like a lot of you guys probably thought that you were a better team than Meade. Meade ends up winning that game, loses a thrilling state title game. But what did that semifinal run last year do to prepare you guys to hopefully get a trip to Fort Collins this year?
Sure. Well, you got to remember the previous 2 years, we started a lot of those now seniors as freshmen and then as sophomores on a given week. In 2023, it was 17 or 18 of them, playing. So it was a tough year. We went 1-9 and had a just horrendously tough schedule, but we knew we were kind of building something. So going from 3-17 the previous 2 years to a 7-3 regular season, and then winning in the first round and then the quarters against Windsor, it was a big confidence builder. However, we didn't quite get over that hump. So I think now that we've been in a deep playoff run, the kids know, starting all the way back in January, that we had to work even harder as a staff, as well as the players in the weight room and on the practice field, to get to that next level. And, we're still, the gears are still rolling, but I feel like we're in a really good spot here these last 3 games, and then see where the chips fall with the seeding and make our run.
You guys have been scoring really well this season, but in terms of individually, there's not a lot of guys that have really gaudy individual stats. How do you kind of describe your team and kind of their approach, sort of that, everybody's doing their job, no big stars necessarily. How do you describe your team and what you expect to see from them as you approach state?
Yeah, we transitioned from more of a run and gun system the previous 2-3 years with Emmett Munson being quarterback, to now Tucker Ingersoll, who transferred in as a sophomore and played significant snaps, especially in the playoffs last year, but more to a true spread set. And we still have some formations and whatnot with Emmett at quarterback. But with that being said, we've kind of described it to our players as everyone's going to get love in a lot of different ways. On the offensive side of the ball. And the thing, especially those seniors have realized, is the only stat they should care about and truly have bought into this year is the W. As long as we're getting a win, people are going to get love. And it might be Emmett on a given week, or Luis Santana, or Jade Molina last week was phenomenal receiver for us. So we do have a lot of weapons that we try to spread that wealth out. And again, it's just contingent upon the team we're playing and the game plan. There's some days that we might like to chuck the ball around a little bit more, like we did against a gritty Severance defense, and it finally opened up in the second half. And then there's other weeks like we're going to just line up in our heavier stuff and run the football. So it's nice to have that option and be pretty effective. But the kids, I'm really proud of them, that very selfless, and a lot of them play defense, either start or rotation, so they know they got to be fresh on the other side of the ball too.
Hey, Coach, I would just like to say thank you for bringing back that good old Pomona football, right? I mean, for taking it back from the years and you were part of the programs. I remember our days of training the guys like Jermaine Gonzalez and that great team, your overtime wins against Eagle Crest of years. And how do you adjust to your community changing, now being a 3A program, not that big 5A program? Because I know there's a lot of great schools out there for kids to go to. Yeah. How do you adjust your youth with coming in? What do you look to make your team and program more attractive to get where you are now and having a great substantial team?
Sure, yeah. And, when I took this job in 2021, I knew that there was going to be a bit of a decline just demographically in the area with just our feeder schools in general. We're now a 6-12 school, but, kind of how I sell it or present it to, prospective student athletes is, the other 2 5A schools in the area, you're one of 120 or maybe even one of 140 and 150. And that's a lot more challenging to get on the field, on the varsity field, say, as a sophomore. And, though we're a 3A school, we still have about 80, 90 kids in the program, which is really solid. But it allows us to give kids more opportunities to get on the varsity field, preferably not as freshmen, as I had to a few years back, but certainly as sophomores. And it gives kids those opportunities to say, well, I have an opportunity to maybe be a 3-year starter at a school that's still very competitive. And, if we can, Lord willing, get to that championship game or even get a banner, I think that's going to even be more of a selling point where people see that it's 3A football. And, we're going to have plenty of kids go on to play college football in this loaded senior class we have. So in terms of just, I know that's a part of it too. Parents want to see, kids getting opportunity at the next level. And even though we're at 3A, we sent 2 kids on scholarship last year, probably we'll have 4 or 5 this year. So just a little bit smaller of a sample size, but we're still doing a lot of good things. And, the other side of it is we're kind of that more blue collar, older side of Arvada in a lot of ways. And I think there's a lot of people that appreciate that. As you said, just kind of that old gritty, Pomona style football. There's still a lot of people on the north side of town that, want to send their kids to a school that's like that. So that's been beneficial as well.
When you talk about that blue collar work, I mean, you see that obviously with what you guys have done on the defensive side of the ball. when you're trying to tell those kids that there's great opportunities, do you emphasize the balance at all? I mean, I look at you guys, I think you have 15 passing touchdowns, 14 rushing touchdowns. So does it help knowing that whatever style you prefer to play, that you guys are able to make that work, obviously regarding depending on who you're playing and what
Yep.
the defensive looks you're seeing are?
Yeah, certainly. And, I believe I have just a fabulous coaching staff. It's been kind of 5 years building it to the people I wanted on staff. But the guys on the offensive side of the ball do just a fabulous job of looking at who we're playing and what they're doing. Obviously a lot of 3A schools are more run heavy, and we can certainly be a run heavy team as well. But us being able to spread the ball out, I think causes a lot of fits with a handful of different teams that might not see that. Week 3, we play Green Mountain, who's a little bit maybe in a rebuild, if you will. But last year we were more just that run and gun and still scored 33 points. But this year, us coming out in our true spread stuff and, scoring 6 passing touchdowns, 5 of which were in the second quarter, I think kind of shocked them a little bit. But we have that big playability in the passing game. So just being able to figure out the kind of weaknesses on the defense and how we're going to attack it, again, having players in a scheme that allows you to do that makes my job much easier for sure. But we're really lucky to have those kids that are playing at a high level for us right now.
No, Coach, you mentioned Emmett earlier, bringing him in, and he's kind of been that steady hand for you. Talk a little bit about his leadership style and what that, kind of should translate to heading down the stretch here.
Sure. Well, again, Emmett's kind of our guy. He's a state champ wrestler. He got second as a sophomore, third as a freshman. And the beauty of all that, as good as he is at wrestling, he'll tell anyone, football is my primary sport, which at Pomona, that makes my job a little bit easier because we got some fabulous wrestlers that some play for me, some don't. But having a guy that says, I'm a football first guy is huge. And for the most part, Emmett does lead by example. He's really committed to himself into the weight room, especially this past year, putting on about 10 or 15 extra pounds of muscle. And it's just the way he practices. He takes pride in conditioning. He doesn't let anyone beat him in conditioning, and he'll call out, his buddies, fellow seniors, fellow captains, if they're not picking it up in practice, whether it be a drill or conditioning. Like I said, he just does a really good job of kind of being that steady, conveyor of the ship and lead us in the right direction. And then when the lights are on, he shines brightest. He's just a guy I know on both sides when we need to play and, hey, you need to get this done, Emmett. He knows. And the other thing I would say with his leadership, just his football IQ is very, very high. He came in as a freshman having to be a two-way starter, a receiver, and outside linebacker. And I just think the amount of games he will have played when it's all said and done, plus playing on both sides of the ball starting, I mean, that's an unbelievably large amount of plays and games at the varsity level. So just his football IQ has been huge, and we moved him to the mic this year, calling our defense, and he hasn't missed a beat. He's our leading tackler. I would have to look up the stats, but I know it's by a lot, and just so instinctual on both sides of the ball. He's a kid that just gets it, and he just continues to get better and better. And again, just very, 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 very lucky to have him.
I know your focus is mainly on your team, but when you look around what's happened in 3A this year, I mean, you're just seeing all this craziness where Holy Family will lose to Pueblo East and then turn around and beat Meade, and Thompson Valley always holds off a tough Loveland team, but then gets shut out by Timnath. I mean, have you been surprised at kind of the swings that we've seen across this 3A field as we have?
Yeah, I think going in, just Meade, the type of school they are. I know they had a lot of seniors last year, but I figured they'd reload pretty well. I knew what Windsor had coming back, so that's not a shock to me that they're doing really well. Roosevelt's always tough. But yeah, like a team like Holy Family that was very down last year and still slipped into the playoffs. Them beating Roosevelt, but then, like you said, that kind of next couple stretches of games, that's a little bit of a head scratcher maybe. I think it shows you the parity in 3A, and if you look at every state championship year the last maybe 5 or 10 years, besides maybe Roosevelt getting in there twice and winning one, or Lutheran losing a couple times, it's usually 2 new teams every year, which I think is pretty neat, and it just shows that if a team can get hot at the right time, they're going to have a chance to, go the distance, especially if they get a favorable seed. So, for us, we're just worried about the next week. Obviously, we have the last week on our schedule circled against, still, in my opinion, a very, very good Thompson Valley team. And we're going to need our best effort these next 2 weeks to feel really confident going into that one that very well could be for the league championship going into the playoffs.
Now, heading into the playoffs, Coach, I'm going to put you on the spot. Now, I'm biased here. I am a Lutheran track coach, but I won't give up your secrets. I mean, it's surprisingly everyone's doing something different in 3A. What do you have to do different going into the playoffs? I mean, obviously you're equal, right? You're running the ball, you're throwing the ball well. As an old football guy, there's something in up your sleeve. What are you looking to execute going into the playoffs a little bit better?
Sure. I think one thing is the players especially, but we've taken our in-season lifting even more serious than, say, a year ago. It's easy to maybe taper a little bit too much down the stretch. And, our game last year against Thompson Valley was obviously a very physical slugfest. And, we had to sit 4 players due to injuries. Our first playoff round 1 against Conifer last year. So I'm hoping we're going to go into that, first round of the playoffs healthier. So that's a big part of it. And I think now having 3 games of playoffs under our belt as coaches and as players, we've already gone back and evaluated every game of here's some things we did really well. And man, here's some things that, especially that Meade game, cost us the game. So just having that experience allows us to be in a better boat even going forward. And, we're hopefully vying for that number 1 or number 2 seed. I'm interested to see how it'll all play out. And then with the transition, I know, Dan, we talked about it a little bit next year, just max preps only, it'll be even more interesting. But again, just looking at whatever team we're playing and how we're going to attack them on both sides of the ball. Same thing as a regular season, but just knowing we have the weapons and ability to beat anyone. So we're just excited for when that opportunity comes.
I've talked to a lot of athletic directors and coaches, and I've gotten varying answers on the change to max preps rankings. Do you have a take that you're comfortable saying on the show, or?
Yeah, no, I mean, I always thought RPI was more kind of a basketball metric than football personally. Max Prep seems to love us the last 2 years for what it's worth, and that's probably because that strength of schedule is calculated. Correct me if I'm wrong. The only concern I would have with Max Preps only is if they take point differential into account based on your ranking. That's what I've heard from some people.
So the only thing that I've heard, and I asked Jerry Valerio at Max Preps if he wanted to come on and talk, and he basically told me he can't tell us anything that that's not in the frequently asked questions that you can find on CHSAA now. But there is a margin of victory component in those rankings, but it's capped.
Oh,
so it's
okay.
Yeah, they cap it. So, and I don't know what the football number is. I know a couple of other sports, but basically it doesn't matter. Let's just say your cap is 21. It doesn't matter if you win a game by more than that. They just factored in as like a 21-point win.
Got it. And that was my only kind of caveat to it is like, there's some schools that if we left our starters in, I mean, we were up 49-0, say, to Kennedy in the first half. That's not the coach I am. I'm not looking to run up the score, but right. I could see teams saying, well, we need to get that. So that's good that there's a cap. So, I don't have any issue with it. I think the chips fall where they do, but I'm glad that Max Preps does recognize, our strength of schedule. And right now, our only loss is to either the number 1 or number 2 ranked 4A school, however you look at it. So if we went out, I think we deserve to be the number 1 seed. But like I said, we just got to see where the chips fall.
Last one I'm going to ask you about. A couple of off seasons now. I've had some early mornings where I've come down from a mountain in Manitou Springs and run into your boys a little bit. So, Doug's going to laugh. I dragged Doug up the incline once. Jermaine will laugh because, I talk about it incessantly. But when you bring in that kind of off-season training, you talked about your guys' in-season lifting, but how much does that just kind of help build kind of a team bond as you're going into the season? Because you guys are on that thing in like late July when it's 80 degrees about the time that you get up there when the sun's up.
Yeah, I mean, luckily we get down there early. Now, going on a bus from North Arvada at 3:30 in the morning. We're all pretty tired, but it's just been a fun team building activity that I wanted to promote, and luckily our booster club supported. And it's just been kind of like a yearly activity. We do a senior retreat down on a farm in Alamosa. I went to Adams State, so still have some connections down there. But it's just been a real fun thing for the kids. And even though we do, it's usually I think it lands on a Tuesday. So we go Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays in the summer with our lifting. So they're hitting legs on Monday, and they still in conditioning, but they still know, okay, we got to turn it around the next day and climb this thing. And we obviously last year I think it was 65 kids. Every kid made it up, and we have some big boys. But it's just a mentality that there's no other choice. You got to make it up. And luckily, I have 5 or 6 staff members that kind of are tiered throughout that thing, encouraging the players. And nothing's better. Like I said, that picture of seeing all the boys up there just makes me proud to be their coach. That they're committed that much to it. And hell, it's a good workout for me. I'm pretty cooked when I get home too. So it's a lot of fun, and we plan on continuing it for sure.
What's your fastest kid?
I think last year, Emmett was close. Jason Gomez, one of our other starting linebackers, they were right at like 30 or 31 minutes, which my record, this is like post-college, was like 36. So they kicked my butt even in my heyday. But they just sprint up it. And then I say, all right, you got to walk 300 steps down and get the bigs up here. And oh, no problem, and they pop down and do it. So.
Well, Coach, you won me over with the word taper, right? Because as much as you talk about getting up that hill and being tough in the summertime, the coaches who can understand that word, come October and November, to taper off a little bit, is when they get their athletes to perform the best, when they start tapering off. You can't keep watering the flower, right? I mean, you sooner or later, you got to allow that to flourish. So it's not about the nourishing the dirt versus the dirt. So great job on a great season.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
We've got about 3 weeks for you guys, 2 weeks for everyone else, 3 weeks for you guys. But, Coach, playoffs are getting close. So best of luck to the Pomona Panthers, and we'll see where you guys fall in the playoff brackets. And I'm excited to see how everything plays out, because that'll be starting November. Geez, now
the 13th or 12th.
Yeah, right in there.
Absolutely. So, well, appreciate you guys having me on. We're looking forward to getting this run going again. The kids are hungry to finish it. So
awesome. Coach Johnson, the Pomona Panthers, they currently sit at number 2 in the selection and seeding index. So, or no, I'm sorry, number 3. But we'll see. It's a couple weeks for the Pomona Panthers to improve their seeding, and things will get going. Guys, in most classifications, we just have 2 weeks of regular season football left, as crazy as that sounds. And we're going to jump right into those guys that Doug was bragging about early. Jermaine, those Legend Titans, they're not forgotten as we get into the final 2 weeks of the season.
Well, allow me to clean myself up here, because I have to make sure I can walk around Parker a little bit better. Yeah, I think they are in a great position. If you look at the offense, the way they're putting things out there, it's just not in the air. I mean, they're very consistent with just dominating that line of scrimmage. I mean, some of those plays, and some of the play that they have had is about dominating the line of scrimmage. And then on the defensive side, I mean, they're playing very hard. I mean, only giving up 124 points on the year. They are truly, special teams are controlling that game a lot as well. So I'm very excited to see Legend, as well as the other top 3 or 4 in that 5A, what they can battle with over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot from DJ Bordeaux. He's kind of coming into his own. He's peaking at the right time, and we're starting to see that with a lot of other quarterbacks that we're going to get into here in a second. Dougie, I sent you a text on Thursday because Columbine, a team that has struggled very, very quickly out the gate this year, they were hanging with Ralston Valley. They led at various points in that game, and they were battling with them right up until the fourth quarter when the Mustangs pulled away. But I mean, is Columbine showing the life they need to, or is it a little too late in the process for them to make up the ground that they need to get in the postseason? They're in right now. If the playoffs started today, they are in.
Well, and I think it all has to do with the math and the indexing and all that stuff as far as whether they actually get in or not. I mean, going in with a couple wins, would probably do the trick. I know we played the game a couple weeks ago, in terms of what teams had to do to get in. I would say Columbine's in that boat. They probably need to win out in order to secure a spot, but they're kind of that team. I think a team like Cherry Creek or Legend, I mean, obviously people, don't necessarily want to see them across the bracket. But Columbine kind of falls into that category a little bit too. I mean, yeah, they're not as highly rated. Yeah, they don't have as impressive of a record. However, they've come on. So what they're doing now is considerably different than what they were doing at the beginning of the season. And you throw that into the mix of they play a lot like an Air Force football team where it's just a different look, regardless of how good the opponent is. They haven't seen much of what Columbine does all season long. So if there's an adjustment period for any defense to try to play against that single wing option, game plan that Andy Lowry has literally perfected. So I think from a sheer entertainment standpoint, I would love to see Columbine get in, whether it's an up year or a down year or whatever. I think they're a team that could make any play-up matchup interesting. And so, they will probably get in as a little bit of a lower seed. So who knows who they might face that they could, put a scare in early in the bracket.
Well, and I think they are sitting at number 21 in one of the metrics. So let's just call it the seeding index for argument's sake. So if they're at 21, I think that puts them against Fort Collins in the first round at number 12. And that would just be an interesting way to go. That's probably a team in that first round where you've got the top 8 seeds getting buys. Columbine's probably not a team that you want to see at this point. I mean, would that be a fair way of saying this?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to say it. I mean, the word Columbine just brings, they bring W's, right? They bring wins. And at this point of the season, in the world of football, you have a drill what they call inside out, right? There's inside out. You see no skill guys in this drill, and you're taking everything from, tight ends in, and you just run the ball. That's what you're going to play when you play against when you play against Columbine. That's what Doug is alluding to. That type of offense is going to scare a lot of people. If you're not set up to have that type of inside and out type of defensive play, yeah, they can scare you. They can beat you. The Ralston Valley game, the 1 point back, that comes to youth, right? They haven't won all the year, so they don't know how to win. We seen that yesterday with the Broncos, right? Trying to figure out how to win games, right? It takes them 3 quarters to figure that out, how to win a game. It doesn't work every week. Either they don't play great or they play great. And I think that's what you're going to have when you come up against Columbine in the playoffs. A team like if it was a Fort Collins you're coming up against, I'm sure that those schools are going to prep and be ready for that type of offense. But, I hope we get to see them. Because every team deserves to have a turnover in the classes, right? And some young guys come through. We were seeing it with Regis, right, going on this year with Regis. Those kids are fighting wide. So we will see a different type of Columbine if they do make it to the playoffs. Trust me, they will understand they are in the playoffs, and they will be ready to come and swing it hard.
Well, there's a tradition there, and I think whether you're Columbine, whether you're a sophomore or a junior or a senior, you understand kind of the weight that the name Columbine carries in the terms of high school football in Colorado. I think on the other side, if you're playing a team like that, you haven't been paying attention to Columbine all season like we have. Those kids on the other sideline just go, that's Columbine. They won state 2 years ago. So I think there's an elevation that comes along with just the history and tradition of that school and that program. You throw in that single wing and man, it's a team. You're right. I don't think people want to see them across from them on the bracket that first, round or two.
No, and if we stay with some of those Jeffco teams, Ralston Valley and Arvada West are very much on track for their collision course. I think it'd be next week as undefeated teams. We're seeing some real heavyweight football being played over with those Jeffco schools. So when you look at that matchup, what do you need to see out of either team for them to really solidify themselves with your Cherry Creeks, with your Legends, with your Mountain Vistas going into the playoffs?
I honestly think the defensive side is going to have to step up. And we've seen a couple of those, pick sixes and some great defensive play from those teams over the weekend. And I think the defense are truly going to have to step up. I mean, you go back to when Columbine being, not only did they win state, they were, correct me if I'm wrong here, they're the last team to beat Cherry Creek, right? They're the last team to beat Cherry Creek. And that's what people think about over the state championship. It might have, I think they were the last team to beat them. Or did they lose to Grandview last year? Maybe Grandview last year. Point being is like you go into that game, you're going to have to stand up. And those, between Ralston Valley and Arvada West, it's going to have to be some defensive, stout over those couple weeks in the playoffs. Now, we all know this is UPSWING, right? And we talk about performance. So we train it harshly. And you heard Coach just speak about the word tapering off. And how do you train your kids to be ready to play in their playoffs? I think, what is this conditioning level? What's the strength level? Is the speed still as fast as it was in week 2 and 3? So I think those teams have to get ready to, elevate that part, right? The performance side of things versus the Cherry Creek. I mean, teams that are, no disrespect to the other teams, but, Cherry Creek and Legend, and Valor and Mountain Vista, they're 2 to 3 deep in those skill positions. So where are the skill positions, for those other two to be able to run deep in the playoffs? Because I've been on that sideline, I'm telling you, coaching those kids, and it gets, when you're talking about Thanksgiving weekend and that time, it gets pretty tough, right, for kids, and they're tired and wore down. So those hills don't make a difference versus the maintenance of now. So it'll be interesting to see how the performance level is.
Yeah, and I would say at this stage in the game, the most important thing for both or either team, regardless of whether you win or lose, is that you want to see that you can go toe to toe with the other guy. If you look at those, close games that each of those schools have had, I mean, the game against Fairview comes to mind, and I believe, and now that I say this, it was either Ralston Valley or Arvada West, and it came down to the last play.
It's Arvada West.
Yeah, and I think what you want to see if you're either one of those schools is that regardless of whether you win or lose, you're right there, because the worst thing that could happen to one of those schools is a blowout, because then I think there's doubt going in. But as we've seen it, and I look at this every week when we go to vote, I don't know whether those schools are number 3, number 4, number 5. It's just very hard to tell the difference, within that really 2 through 6, I'd say in 5A. So I think they all, they need to show they belong. So when there's a head-to-head matchup, win or lose, you got to be able to go back in the locker room and go, okay, if we do this or do that, we win or lose a game by a slight margin. It gives coaches, I should say, maybe that little extra thing they need going into the playoff preparation.
Let's just say, hypothetically, you're a team like Legend, and we'll use them because we've talked about them so much. They have, a very top-tier quarterback in DJ Bordeaux. But if we look at the top 4 seeds in 5A, you've got Cherry Creek, Ralston Valley, Mountain Vista, Arvada West. Let's assume everyone wins and gets into the quarterfinals. If you're a Legend, which team do you want to see the least? And let's say besides Cherry Creek, because they've just looked the best so far this year. So of Ralston Valley, Mountain Vista, Arvada West, if you're Legend, who do you want to see the least?
Ralston Valley. I don't think you want to see a team that you played the second time, right? I mean, going in there as the second time within the same season. It's very early. It's not that you don't. It's not about a fear factor as versus like who's familiar with you. So as a coach, you're going to be smart. It's not about moxie and pumping your chest like we'll take on anyone. Right, it's about making it to the next week and what's the best situation for my team to win. And I think a team that you've already played and come close, out of the gate, it would seem like, hey, we want to get our get back and beat this team and battle with them again. Well, you could do that, up in Fort Collins if you make it. But making it to Fort Collins is what's important. So I would say I wouldn't want to see someone I just had a race with, right, that fast, that soon. So that's a team I would say would be Ralston Valley.
Well, I can't disagree with that, but I'd be pretty fearful of Mountain Vista. I think they just have shown all season long that they can just put up massive numbers. And I think if you play a team like that and they happen to get that first punch in, it could be a track race really quickly with a team like Mountain Vista. I mean, they have just shown week in, week out that they can put up numbers. And then I think the game that they had against Valor Christian showed that they can make big defensive plays too. So, I think when you get into the quarterfinals, there really aren't any teams anybody should want to face, but I think for different reasons. And I think that's kind of the logic behind either one of those choices, really.
No, and if you're a legend,
see, Doug, hold on, Dan. Look, I got him right because I answered first. You see what he was doing there? See, I answered first. He was going to my answer there.
It was a great answer, Jermaine. It was a great answer.
Thank you,
great, I might have said it if I didn't go first.
Well, and if you're a legend, the correct mindset is none of those teams should want to face us in the quarterfinals, right?
Exactly.
Like that's the way you should always approach it. My exercise is more of, to get you guys in that mindset of thinking about like what's going to be, beyond Cherry Creek. Because I don't think there's anyone who would disagree that they're the top team in 5A right now. Like, who do you think is the most dangerous team? That was kind of the point of that exercise. And I mean, we can even go a little deeper. I mean, if you look at a team, guys like Valor Christian, since they've made the full-time quarterback switch to Titus Seward, they look good. The Eagles have looked really good. They look a little bit more like the team early on we thought could be your bona fide number 2 in 5A. Of course, they had the loss to Ralston Valley. Mike Sanford said that Ralston Valley would have won that game regardless what was going on. He thinks that if Heward had been full-time quarterback against Mountain Vista, that they maybe come away with that game. And that's not to say anything to knock Dawson Olk, because there's one thing that Dawson Olk is, he's a good teammate to those kids because he's willingly switched to like a tight end receiver type position so that he can still be on the field and contributing, guys. But is Valor Christian maybe a little bit of an underappreciated team that could make a playoff run now that they've kind of got that little piece of their offense figured out?
Well, I'm not gonna, create some shade my way with the Valor crowd, but I can tell you, I think what coach is doing is very smart, right? I think we spoke about this a couple weeks ago. They're putting in place of different type of play sets and different type of ways to win games. Yeah, the full-time position for the QB has been one game, as a full-time quarterback.
Two now, and he threw for 270 yards in the first half of that win over Castleview.
Yeah, and the
first half.
And no disrespect to Castleview, that was a great game, but I think the other young man could also put up some numbers like that. I believe that they're putting together a package with both quarterbacks, right? They want to see if and when they have to put their best football players on the field, if they are in this run, that can they do it? What package can they put together to have both of those guys on the field? Not saying it's going to be only one at QB. It could be 2 at the QB if one's struggling. These are high school kids, right? I mean, 375 this game doesn't mean it can't be 175 and 3 picks the next game. And if so, they have someone they can bring in to create that other synergy. I just see that setup. I mean, Coach Sanford's a great coach, and I truly believe them putting in place what they put, it does allow them to go on a run. It doesn't put them in any bad position because their schedule allows that. Let's just put it like that. A schedule allows them to see kind of like what really is working now and what's not working. Where else can we use, the other young man as well? But it's Valor, just the same way we talked about Columbine. You see the word Valor and it's the playoffs. You should come ready, right? Because they're going to come ready to win the game and move forward like they have in years past.
Yeah, and I think Valor is always an interesting team to follow or consider, however you want to put it, as they get into the postseason, because they do have that target on their back. I don't care what anybody says or who the coach is or what class it is. People want to beat Valor. That's just a fact. So I think they get everybody's best every time they play. So I think the other interesting thing about this is that I do think Mike Sanford is an elite coach. He obviously has earned that kind of belief over the course of his career at lots of different levels. But I do think that there's a lot of elite coaches in Colorado high school football. I mean, you talk about the Dave Logans, the Andy Lowrys, the Jay Maddens, the Mike O'Dwyers. I mean, there's guys that have programs that win and win and win. And Mike wants to be in that club. And regardless of the fact that he's coached Division I football and been on some really, really big time staffs, this is a proving ground for him in his first year as a head coach in Colorado high school football. So I think that's a great dynamic to watch. And, I think Mike is a guy that is highly, highly competitive, but also extremely smart, great X's and O's kind of guy. So it's going to be fun to watch down the stretch, because I don't care how many losses they have. What matters is what happens when they face somebody in the playoffs.
That's right. You've got kind of that level 2 teams with, if we count Legend in that, your Legends, Fairview, Valor, one more I've got off the top of my head, like maybe an Eagle Crest, some of those teams, and then those 4 still undefeated top teams in 5A, which we know at least one of them will go, because Arvada West and Ralston Valley play each other. So we know one of those is going to get knocked off. Speaking of undefeated teams that'll be knocking off, we've got down in 2A, guys, we've got 5 undefeated teams all kind of vying for those top 2 spots in the selection and seeding index. We're going to see 2 of them face off this week in terms of Strasburg playing Kent Denver. Wellington hasn't got another big win last week. They've outscored their last 3 opponents: Berthoud, University, and Eaton. 3 teams who are no slouches on the football field. They've outscored them 142-12. So Kent Denver, Strasburg, Wellington, TCA, and Brush are your 5 undefeated teams in 2A. Any guesses on who might end up taking the top 2 spots in that index? It's going to be a fun 2 weeks.
Yeah, I love Strasburg, and I don't say that just to say it, because of our last edition. The young man was here, part of us in our
Dodge.
Yes, and
Perfect running back name.
Exactly. You always put that out there, Dan. And I tell you, my Mitchell Martin history there. I just believe they have what it takes, and they have some great weapons there. But I'm excited for that 2A. I mean, I'd say you have to have that many undefeated teams. I mean, you have winners. And anytime you have winning football teams going into the playoffs, it doesn't matter who is and what and how they rank you. This is going to be some winning football teams in the top of that, those brackets, and we're going to see some good football there.
Well, I like Strasburg too, because they've lived up to expectation. I mean, we kind of came into the season talking about them, and they've come through at every turn. But that stat you just put up about Wellington, I mean, and you're right, those teams, Berthoud, University, Eaton, those are good football teams. It's not like, you see Broomfield pasting Adams City or something in 4A. It's not a comparable. I mean, these are teams that can beat other teams. So the 142 is impressive on offense, but I think what's even more impressive is that you're holding those 3 teams to 12 combined points. I mean, that's a formidable defense right there. So, the old saying, defense travels, defense wins championships, defense is great in the cold. All those things really apply in Wellington's favor as we get, down toward the nitty gritty in November, when it does start to get cold, and we do travel to Fort Collins, and there's some storylines there, but that stat says a lot for me about Wellington.
And I've said it for the bulk of the year. I mean, you had Tanner Gray coming back as their quarterback, and you had really a Wellington team that had a chip on its shoulder after what happened in the 2A state title game last year. And if for anyone who doesn't recall, that defense that you're talking about, Doug, forced a fumble on TCA's final drive, and the refs incorrectly blew the runner down. And I've talked to so many officials since then, and everyone acknowledges that it was the incorrect call. And I'm not saying that TCA was an undeserving champion in the least, because that was a fantastic football game. The winner of that game was a deserving state champion. But to have it come down on a play like that, where your defense made the necessary play to win you a title, and you don't get it, that sends you into the next season with a little bit of something to prove. And this Wellington team all year has played like they have something to prove. And I think a lot of that also comes from Travis Peoples, their head coach, who's kind of done some really good things at various programs around the state. So they're a 2A team that I'm very much watching as we move forward.
Dan, you didn't hear what Sean Payton tried to tell you this week, is that you can't criticize the officials, but you can disagree with the officials.
Yeah.
You could be fined too. You'd be fined for running on the field to the 2-yard line. You know.
I mean, well, forget about Aaron Glenn running to midfield the week before in London. But I mean, two notes on that, Doug, is I got a text message from an official buddy of mine who at some point I think we'll have on the show if we have a question over a call that, you know, happens on the field. But he sent me a text that night and said that was officiating malpractice. and I talked to the former president of the Football Officials Association last week. He was watching the same game that I was at, and unsolicited just turned to me and asked, "So were you down in Pueblo last year for that 2A title game?" And we just started talking about the whole thing. And it's unfortunate. It's everything in the heat of the moment, right? I would say that no officials deserve the reaction that crew was getting in terms of the voicemails and text messages that they received. But, you know, it's something that you obviously need to teach and coach and move forward for the officials as well. So, you know, here's to hoping that we don't have a state championship game that comes down to a call like that.
Fair enough.
But if there is a game where that might happen, Dougie, it might be one of the more competitive state championship games on the docket this fall. And that might be the 1A game, because we keep trending towards Lyman and Buena Vista, especially after a big win over Ray by the Badgers this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that class, I think, you know, you sort of threw it out there in your show notes. I do think it is kind of a collision course between those two schools. You look at some of the other top schools, and Ray was one of them, but, you know, maybe Centauri or Forge Christian, and they've, you know, Lyman especially has already beaten a couple of those. So I think it boils down to those two schools being on opposite sides of the bracket and meeting in the end. And I think that could be one of the best state championships among all the classes, just considering their first matchup, how close it was. Obviously, it's a different thing when you're playing at a home site versus you're playing at CSU Pueblo. So, you know, obviously would never root for any team necessarily, but that sure would be a fun matchup to be able to see down in Pueblo.
Jermaine, I want to ask you real quick, in a situation like that, how much does playing on a neutral field, in your experience as a high-level athlete, how much does that factor in? Because Buena Vista won that game in Buena Vista, right? There's a comfort level there. Lyman's guys have been down to the Thunder Bowl at CSU Pueblo. They were there 2 years ago. They've won quite a few state championships down there. So how much can a venue like that make the difference in a game that's going to be close?
I mean, it's everything. You know, I don't want to sound like LeBron James in his commercial with Kevin Hart. It's like, it's everything. But it is everything, right? It is when you start to talk about how the quarterbacks see the sky and see the lights and how many lights do they have. And I've been at CSU Pueblo, you know, playing that state championship the COVID year when it was Creek versus Valor. And it was a different lighting inside of that dome, right? So it could play factors of that, you know, when it comes to quarterbacking. It can come at different of the sound and the distance from the coaches to the sideline versus a smaller stadium. But in all due respect, when it comes down to a state championship game, that's all that matters, right? You could throw those type of things kind of out the window. Yeah, you have a different, you know, the cheers and boos are the same, right? You go into a game and you just play the game. The neutral site, you know, being a guy that played for Nick Saban, I could tell you, he said, we'll play you in a phone booth, right? It doesn't make a difference, right? Let's play, right? So those two teams are phone booth teams, right? They're going to be ready to play no matter where. I mean, you can cut the lights off everywhere. They won't even know where they are when that ball is kicked off, if they are both in that state championship game. I could tell you this, the distance of travel that would be allowed stadium. And I don't know what side Doug, I think we know what side Doug may be leaning towards if he's at that game, but nothing against Doug. But I tell you what, the crowds are going to come, and those hometowns are going to make that Pueblo their home for that weekend if it comes to be.
Yeah,
I'm like you, Jermaine. I just got to watch what I say because that's the neighborhood I got to walk around in, win or lose.
I'll tell
be
you
careful.
we've seen what both of those crowds can do. I mean, Lyman shows up and those guys are tailgating at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning on game day. It doesn't matter if it's 10 degrees. I mean, Dougie, I can't remember if it was last year when you ended up, or 2 years ago when you bowed out because a snowstorm had hit and it was going to be a little tougher for you to get down there. It was a cold day. Didn't matter to the supporters of the Lyman Badgers. And I know from past experience, not that I would ever encourage it, but if you want to rob a bank in Buena Vista, the day to do it might be the Saturday of the 1A state championship game. So a couple more things we want to touch on, Jermaine, and then we're going to let you get out of here. We know you've got some stuff to do. 4A, Palmer Ridge came out, and Vista Ridge was a team that we've kind of put in that second tier of 4A, and Palmer Ridge came out and just dominated that game very early. Quarterback Knox Tinlin is still out with a little bit of an injury. If I'm guessing, I'd say he's probably going to be back for the playoffs. Cole Harris is playing well. I mean, guys, if he continues playing well, is that just a kid that Palmer Ridge just needs to ride with?
I would say yes. I mean, he's hot, right? I mean, this is
they've both played well this year too.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you create and you run with. I mean, you look at any level of football, right? We've seen a great example this weekend, all the way down to some great examples in college, over the weekend with some great games you see. These are, teenagers. You definitely ride with that. I mean, you come to teams are wrapping around this one player, and he's bringing that energy. We've seen it with the Giants. If they should have put Scatterboo on defense, yesterday, and maybe that would have helped them a little bit, bring that energy, because when you have kids like that or bring that type of energy and pulling up everyone else, you have to continue to go with that. Now, here's the opposite side to it. Everyone else is going to be looking for it as well. So as a coach, you should be ready to have something behind that closed door that they try to close, and ready to offset the defense and how the team is going to try to regulate him. So, yeah, I think it's a great game. Hey, great 4A football. I mean, I'm serious. It's turned into some great 4A football at this time of the year. Those guys, play 5A early. They play a lot of football. So you're seeing some good 4A football right now.
Yep.
I think you look at, we talked a lot about the parity in 3A and kind of the unknowns and the surprises and, anything could happen kind of mentality in 3A. I look at the top of 4A and I have a little bit of the same feeling, not necessarily because I think, there's been upsets and things like that, but because those top teams, Broomfield, Montrose, Dakota Ridge, they haven't necessarily played. I wouldn't say they haven't played anybody, but they haven't played juggernauts in the last few weeks. And I don't know that they will leading into the state tournament. So I think that is going to be very interesting to see, those teams, they're getting big wins almost every week. So when they face up against another team that, has also been getting big wins, like who comes out on top? They haven't faced anybody that's tested them a lot in terms of those top schools in 4A.
Well, you better not let Montrose coach Brett Mertens hear you say that, because what he told me on Friday night after they got the running clock going against Mesa Ridge was that Mesa Ridge has as good a skill players as anyone in the state. And it was a great test for Montrose because they were able to tackle those athletes in space and, kind of meet those challenges that they're going to be asked to meet in the playoffs.
Montrose, what was the score of the game?
Now you're asking me questions off the top of my head, Doug. If you give me 1 second, I will get to the Colorado Prep scoreboard. It was 54-22.
Okay.
So that's what I mean. You can give me all the coach speak you want, with all due respect to the coaching staff.
We're also talking about a Mesa Ridge. We're also talking about a Mesa Ridge team who was fresh off a win over Pueblo West, who was a consistent top 10 team. The Red Hawks still have to face Pueblo West in Pueblo West. So I'm just, the Montrose, who is our number one team in the state, still has a challenge left in them, and they are coming off a win over a good Mesa Ridge team.
Fair enough. I'll stand by my point, but it's okay.
Oh yeah, I'll knock you down with facts. That's all. On top of that, Broomfield beat up Grand Junction Central to they still just have the one loss to Erie, and Dakota Ridge got a win over Highlands Ranch in 4A. So those top four that we're talking about, that parity at the top of 4A is still right there. Guys, I don't know who else would have done this, but I ended up tuning into the NFHS network because I was concerned about Akron's fourth quarter deficit against Day Spring Christian. I watched the Rams pull that one out. They remain undefeated and the number one team in 8-man this year, right now this season, and I think they're atop the seeding index as well. All your top teams in 6-man rolled. It's Idalia is still the number one team. Looks like Stratton and Cheyenne Wells look very much like they're in line to go for another state championship. Jermaine, after right before we get you out of here, I always ask you about what you're excited about with Upswing, but I want to tell you about what I'm excited about with Upswing, because in 2 weeks we're going to be sitting right next to you.
Oh, wow.
In 2 weeks, we will be broadcasting the Colorado Prep Show from Upswing as we present a state tournament bracket release reaction show. We thought about doing it on Sunday, but the Broncos play at 11 o'clock, and I don't know about you guys, but after what we watched yesterday, we can't miss any Broncos stuff. We can't ask anyone in the state to miss any Broncos action. So instead, we're just going to wait until Monday. We're going to broadcast our normal time, but we will be at the Upswing facility. Me, Doug Ottewell, I think Danny Bailey's going to come down in person. We're just going to make it a whole deal. And guys, that'll be our kickoff to the road to the state tournament. So we're really excited. That's what I'm excited about when it comes to Upswing. So, but aside from that, Jermaine, what are you excited about with Upswing?
Well, I'm excited. All this room in here, we can finally come here and gather together, right? And have it from here. I'll make sure I have, bring your mic, Doug, because I'm trying to beat you to the punch. So make sure you bring your own mic, because I'm going to bug your mic and you can't speak before me. But honestly, I'm very excited about a couple of things. The first thing I'm very excited is, Riverdale Ridge is that team. You heard me, you see me wigging my finger here. Dan's looking like, why is he wigging his finger like that? Because when Doug made his point about those guys haven't played a lot of top teams. I think one team, and I think Doug, you alluded to it a couple weeks back, we've really overlooked and looked past, like Riverdale Ridge, and they stand 8-0, all right, and they are, they score 375, only giving up 45 points on the year. So who comes across that team? And we're very excited. And today I was getting, pushed to the fire about two young men who are training here, Dean and Drake Presswood, for Riverdale Ridge. And they were talking about how great they've looked and, giving me junk about how we don't talk about them, right? How we haven't talked about them. And just very excited for them versus Broomfield this week. So that'll be that matchup we talk about, Doug.
That is a big matchup.
Yeah, big matchup as Broomfield faced, a team like this who can come out and score those points. You talk about skill guys. I mean, that Riverdale Ridge skill guys, they're ready to go. I mean, they are putting up big numbers in the way that you want your skill guys to do it. It's untouched. I like to call it Tyreek Hill way, where they didn't tackle Tyreek Hill a lot, right? And he's put up big numbers. So very excited for that game. Dan, I can see you're ready to jump on that already. That game. Are you going down to that one as well?
No, we're pretty much going to be manning the command center, mainly because we're also traveling to a lot of state championships over the next couple of weeks. So,
awesome. Awesome. But, so we are very excited for another week here at Upswing. As far as our track and field team is starting and getting kids in here, the season's ending, right? Youth sports. Either you made it to, with youth football, you made it to the playoffs, or you haven't made it to the playoffs. So excited to start getting those young people back and on their way to their winter sports. So you see a lot of those winter sports taking off when you guys get down here for the show. You see us starting to post for those. And anyone interested, like I said, in that training for basketball, as well as running indoor track, you can check us out on upswingfoundation.org. We'll be happy to place you in there and get you rolling.
Awesome, Jermaine. We're so pumped for what's going to be happening in 2 weeks. Next week, we'll be talking about the final regular season games for, of course, the big boys in 5A and 4A, and then some of those young, smaller classes. One more week of regular season football after that for 3A. But Yeah, man. Next week will be regular, and then in 2 weeks, we're all just going to hang out together and chat about postseason football, which is just going to be such a great time of year. So, Jermaine, we're going to let you go, man. Appreciate your time as always, and we'll chat with you next week.
Take it easy, guys. See you next week.
Yeah, Jermaine.
All right, Dougie, we've got some loose ends to wrap up here. And when we get back from this quick break, we're going to talk about half of the playoff selection metric going away next year. So more on that after this.
There are those who say the modern world has made us lose touch with places like this. We say, that depends on what you're driving.
This is Tim Anderson of Gordon Insurance, and we are proud to support all of our area athletes. With offices in Lyman, Callahan, Flagler, Sterling, and Kit Carson, we offer all types of insurance, including home, auto, commercial, farm, crop, life, bonds, and workman's compensation. We are independent and thus can offer you multiple choices of companies, not just one. Call or visit the office near you, and one of our agents can take care of you. See all of our contact information by going to www.gordonins.com or call me at 719-740-1361.
Welcome back into the Colorado Prep Show presented by UPSWING. Dougie, depending on who you read on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, whatever your preferred version of that is, CHSAA is either incredibly lazy or finally taking accuracy as a priority, as it's gotten rid of the RPI metric. Starting next year, they'll be moving to just using max preps rankings. A combination of both made up the current selection and seeding index that would basically select the at-large bids, because league champions will still be protected in these various bracket sports. But it basically seeded out the rest of the playoff field that way, and also used it as the primary seeding metric as well. So I don't know how much time you've had to go in and look at it, but what's your initial reaction when you hear something like that?
You know, I think my initial reaction, regardless of what, what I really know about a certain index or a certain, selection method or whatever, is that you can do no right. I mean, no matter what you do, as I learned when I was a pretty little kid, the CHSAA has a tough job of trying to please everyone, and they never, ever will. So I think that needs to be said first and foremost. I think the job of everybody at the CHSAA, and really in high school sports in general, no one is trying to exclude deserving teams. I think it's a little bit like we used to see with the NCAA tournament selection show for March Madness, or now we see it in football. Even though that they've expanded the brackets, there's always somebody who isn't pleased about not getting in or how that selection is made. So first and foremost, I think you're never going to win. I think I do have some experience in terms of kind of an RPI system versus a hands-on human component ranking system, as after my father, no longer worked for the CHSAA, he was part of the 5A selection committee for basketball. And I know how much those guys paid attention to basketball teams across the state. And I also watched the brackets to see how accurate they were. And they were incredibly accurate, probably much more accurate than simply using an index, which is, I think, what happens now. Mm-hmm. I do think that the move to max preps for purposes of football is probably going to yield a slightly more accurate picture when it comes to seeding and bracketing and all those things. I just think there's a component to that they've been doing it. They've kind of developed this system that coaches around the state have sort of trusted, I think. For that matter, it could be the Colorado Preps rankings that could be used. Are we able to watch every game? No, but we watch and pay attention to quite a few. So I think it's hard with an index, because I think there's so much, especially the lower the level, the more variables there are. When it comes to high school kids, it's hard to rely on just math to get a team seated correctly as it goes into its postseason.
Yeah, and so What's funny is for over a year now, I've heard various coaches and athletic directors, when playoff time is rolling around, basically tell me, look at the Max Preps rankings because they're far more accurate than what we're seeing from the selection index. And so I know as they were looking toward doing this, and contrary to what a lot of people think, no one sat down at a table and said, let's do this because it's easier. Let's do this because we want to do less work. This was done because the membership, the stakeholders, however you want to say it, in coaches and athletic directors, basically went to the board and said, hey, we keep looking at this and we think this is more accurate. Can we look at doing this? And I can tell you they went to Ryan Casey, who's in charge of kind of the data set stuff for CHSAA, and he basically looked into it and found that if you're looking at the matchup predictions when teams are pitted against each other in the postseason, that the Max Preps rankings had a higher percentage of predicting the outcome than the RPI and even the selection and seeding index. So the big takeaway was that the RPI was actually kind of holding back the selection and seeding index in that regard. And so once all that information was distributed, I mean, I mentioned earlier in the show with Coach Johnson, I asked Jerry Valerio if he wanted to come onto the show and kind of walk us through the Max Preps rankings so that we could get a better sense of it. And what he said was that the frequently asked questions that you see on the website is pretty much what they would tell us. And so that's, you know, I think it makes a lot of people nervous because you don't understand the true metric of it. I think there's a lot of distrust in just assuming that this is going to be right. But when I talk to coaches and athletic directors, the fact that they're on board with it is something that I think is a very good thing. And if it's going to lead to more accurate playoff seeding process, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the fact that coaches and athletic directors went to the CHSAA and said, let's consider this, and some due diligence was done on both sides of that equation, that speaks highly of the move. And look, it won't be perfect either, but if they think that it's going to be more accurate, then I think that's a good start. The thing you also got to remember is that at the end of the day, the best teams always get to the state championship, almost always. I mean, when was the last time the fourth or fifth best team, you know, made it? I mean, I guarantee you, who doesn't care about the seeding index? Cherry Creek. They don't care. They're just going to go out and prove that they're the best team. You know, and you can go down the list, each class. I don't think Montrose cares about how things are seeded. I don't think Lyman cares how things are seeded, or Buena Vista. I mean, I just, you know, at the end of the day, teams are playing for first. They're not playing to see who's, you know, going to lose to first or who might get second. Teams want to win it all. That's kind of the way that goes.
Well, yeah, and the best example I can give you is a team that I've talked about a lot in the time that we started the show is Wellington, right? Wellington was the number 9 seed going into last year's football tournament, and they made it to the state title game, and they were arguably the best team in the state title game. And I think the trouble with that, and this is another issue, and I've debated this so much. We could probably have this debate on the show. I don't know how interesting it'd be for everyone else. Is the way that hosting works in the 2A playoffs. Because if you're a lower seed, so if you're Wellington and you're the number 9 seed and you beat Delta, and you haven't hosted a playoff game, number 1 Strasburg has to go to you. So you know, I'm not a fan of it. And I understand why it happens, especially with those smaller schools. You're asking them to put forth a lot of budget to travel for playoff games. I understand the reasoning. But when that's the case, and if you are one of those top teams, then your seeding index does matter. I mean, Montrose right now sits at number 3 in the selection and seeding index. And I think they'd rather be a number 2 because if they're 3, they're traveling for semifinals.
Yeah, and there is some real consideration when it comes to miles and time and not sleeping in your own bed and all those things. So I do see where seed matters, even to the top seeds. But, you know, I think it's an imperfect system. You wish there would be a neutral field that every team had to play on perfect conditions every year, but
Perfect
to some
officiating.
extent, that's football,
Right.
and it happens at every level, not just high school level.
Yeah, I reached out to CHSAA, the president of the CHSAA board of directors, Joe Brown. He had a conflict. Otherwise, he would have joined us. I want to try and bring him on, whether it's next week or the week after, because I just want to ask him questions of some of the funnier accusations that I've seen on Twitter, just to say, how much of this is true? How much is, and I think that could be fun. And Joe did say that if he didn't have a conflict, he'd be right here. So we'll see if we can get him on. We can continue talking about kids to some extent, Dougie, because we did have state champions crowned over the weekend. The boys tennis individual champions were crowned. The 4A champions were crowned at Pueblo City Park, and Denver Tennis Park right there hosted your those are your singles champions in 5A. And team championships will take place tomorrow at that very facility at the Denver Tennis Park. Courtney Oakes, our friend at the Aurora Sentinel, is going to have all that coverage for us. And you can find a full list of the individual champions as well as the team champion stories tomorrow at coloradopreps.com. We got state softball this week. A lot of another big state tournament, which will begin at Aurora Sports Park on Friday with the championship games coming on Saturday. You can find, for now, the brackets are at chassanow.com. I'm hoping to get those posted up on coloradopreps.com later today. You got high-level team, Cherokee Trail, I know is a top-seeded team. Broomfield, I believe, is the number one team in 5A. Lutheran, of course, a previous state champion, is right there in the mix in 4A. And then Eaton also going for another state championship. So it'll be we'll have coverage of all classifications. Doug, you want to go to Aurora and watch some softball on Saturday?
I am curious, and we talked about it earlier in the show a couple weeks back. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Legend is still alive in both softball and flag football. And as we noted on the show, Lucy Thompson, a star on both teams, literally could play in a state championship game, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, in both softball and flag football. I don't know if that's ever been done. I don't know if there's enough researchers on the staff here at Colorado Preps to find that answer by next week, but I don't think it's ever been done. So watching how Legend does in softball and flag football is definitely on my radar.
So I'd have to go back to get the name. I do remember the school, but there was a day where it was in the spring, a girl at Windsor played in the second round of the girls golf state tournament. And then after she was done, got to Dick's Sporting Goods Park to play in, I believe it was the 4A girls soccer state championship game.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that's cool that it's been done. It'd be really cool if it got done again in two different sports.
Yeah, and I think it would be awesome to see Lucy win. Even one it makes it such a better story, right?
I was never in contention to play for any state championship game, not much less the same one on the same day.
I mean, that's it makes for an all-time story. One that, I mean, maybe you would read about something like that in Mile High Sports Magazine. I'm not sure. Speaking of flag football, semifinals are set. You can find those brackets up on coloradopreps.com. The semifinals will be played, I believe it's Wednesday, Thursday, is what I think it is. And then the state championship games, like you mentioned, will be held at Trailblazer Stadium on Saturday night. I know they go back to back. They're after the state softball games. So my guess is I'll be going from Aurora Sports Park over to Trailblazer Stadium in Lakewood to watch both sets of state championships. Chaparral, probably the big winner of the weekend in flag football. They stunned number 2 Arvada West to advance to the semifinals. They were, I believe they were the number 7 seed for the Wolverines. So Arvada West, part of that huge Jeffco conglomerate of just outstanding flag football programs. I know, I believe Ralston Valley's still in it, and we just see a lot of great action from the kids over in Jeffco, especially with the flag football program. Gold Crown, of course, a big supporter of that whole deal, and they were one of the big advocates to making that a sanctioned sport. So We're going to wrap it up, Dougie. We've got our standouts and letter winners. We've talked about softball a little bit, and I think that's where you're leading us off.
That's right. I got to go down to Fossil Ridge, where Avery Akers, the daughter of the sweet swinging lefty RJ Akers of North Glen High School. A really cool story. Avery is a phenomenal all-state caliber softball player, primarily a hitter and a first baseman. But because of injury, because of a lot of different factors this year, ended up pitching almost every game, every inning, I should say. But this weekend, the number 26 ranked seeded, I should say, SaberCats, they went in and they beat up on number 8, Fruita Monument, and number 10, Pine Creek. And again, with a lack of researchers here on staff 24/7, I'm not 100% sure of this, but my quick research reveals that I don't think a number 26 seed has ever advanced this far in the state softball tournament, much less on the back of somebody who wasn't normally a pitcher. And oh, by the way, she hit a home run in each one of those games. So my shout out goes out to Fossil Ridge's Avery Akers.
Sounds like a Shohei Ohtani game, Dougie.
Very much like, yeah, absolutely.
I'm actually going right down the road from my house to Palmer High School. Brooklyn Barnett, the daughter of former Air Force volleyball coach Keith Barnett. 117 is the magic number for the Palmer sophomore. She leads the Terrors with 117 kills, and then she's second on the team with 117 assists. She's both the most reliable hitter and one of the most reliable passers on that team. Makes for a great all-around volleyball player, Dougie, and the Terrors have already surpassed their win total from last year. So when you're looking at one of the reasons for that, you've got to look for the sophomore. I think she's listed as an outside hitter and part-time setter.
Impressive. 117, that must be your number.
I think I want to say she's number 10, if I remember the clips right. But so far, just having a fantastic year. She's going to have a great volleyball career for Palmer High School. And then we're going to finish it up in Salida. Owen Blazer, the goalkeeper for the Spartans, he's given up just 10 goals in 14 games. So I'm no math whiz, but it seems like it's tough to lose if you're giving up less than a goal per game.
Yeah, you are a math whiz. That's pretty quick.
I'm far from a math whiz, but Spartans are 13-1, sitting at number 2 in the selection seeding index. Boys soccer regular season wraps up this week. So the Spartans will be getting probably a high seed in that 2A soccer tournament as they look to get to Widener Field on November 15th. And Doug, that's going to do it for us. Lot going on this week. We've got, of course, some big football games ahead. A lot of state tournaments. We're going to be running all over the place. So we'll can't wait to see how everything plays out, especially in Aurora and at Trailblazer Stadium. On the Mile High Sports front, Dougie, what's new in that world?
Well, we're piecing together the new issue of Mile High Sports. I know that you've got a pretty fun feature coming out, and just to throw it out there to any of our viewers, Dan's working on a list of the best high school football teams in the history of Colorado. We're not asking for the best 5A or the best 1A. It's the best. You define it however you want. Text, email, DM Dan, and maybe if you get in his good graces, your submission will make it to his list, which will be in the next issue of Mile High Sports. With
so much more than that, of course, Nugget season, Avs season, we're looking forward to all of it. That is the editor-in-chief of Mile High Sports Magazine, Doug Ottewell. I'm the editor-in-chief of Colorado Preps, Dan Mormon. Tune in next week. We wrap up the football regular season. Playoffs are getting closer and closer. This is the Colorado Prep Show presented by UPSWING.